Hello and welcome, everyone. I can see you all entering the virtual room. It's a pleasure to have you all here this morning. This is day 4 of our Reimagining Climate Adaptation Summit. Today we are focused on empowering future leaders in climate change adaptation research, policy and practice. And it's a very exciting time for us to be having this discussion and this meeting. My name is Dr Tayanah O'Donnell. I'm the Executive Director of Future Earth Australia, based at the Australian Academy of Science in Canberra, Australia. We've got people from all over the world with us today, so I'd like to open this webinar by taking a moment to acknowledge traditional owners from all around Australia and wherever you may be. Please use the chat to tell us the country on which you are placed and which you are joining us for this meeting. For us here at the Academy, we are on Ngunnawal country. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Future Earth is a global network of more than 10,000 sustainability researchers and practitioners. Here at Future Earth Australia, I lead the Secretariat for the Australia Oceania Node, and together we work across scales, local to global, to think about and to activate sustainability thought leadership, practice and action. We know that the transition to sustainable development and a zero carbon economy is urgent. Indeed, it is very, very urgent. This event, this entire summit, for which this is day 4, has been a key aspect and program of Future Earth Australia, and it's an ongoing initiative. Throughout 2020 and following the 2019-2020 devastating bushfires, which made media around the world for all of the wrong reasons, we here at Future Earth consulted across the country, across Australia, albeit in the virtual room, asking adaptation practitioners, policymakers, business leaders, community leaders and scholars to share perspectives and knowledge on making climate change adaptation happen in a meaningful and comprehensive and resilient way. This, of course, has to happen in tandem with concerted and comprehensive mitigation efforts. And we recognise the yin and the yang, or the symbiotic relationship between reducing greenhouse gas emissions as urgently and as rapidly as we possibly can, whilst recognising the already locked-in changes and the climate impacts that will result therefrom. Our consultation drew in hundreds of people, and they spoke to us about a range of issues. In particular, we drew attention as a group around the importance of proactive national action and leadership on climate change adaptation. Participants in that consultation process emphasised the need and the importance of inclusive, diverse and equitable climate change adaptation, the framing of adaptation as a cross-societal, cross-sectoral effort, requiring buy-in and action across government, business and community in a coordinated fashion where possible. And there was a strong emphasis on the opportunities associated with adopting proactive climate change adaptation agendas. And those opportunities cross economic, social, environmental and cultural, among other spheres. So I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the entirety of the summit that has been happening in the virtual room all of this week. I'm going to attempt to do that in just a few minutes, although I must do so with a caveat that a few minutes does not do justice to the breadth and depth of our 36 panellists across the previous 3 days. And of course, today we're going to hear from our wonderful keynote, Gayle Schueller, in just a moment, and I'll introduce her soon. So we are honoured to have had such a diverse range of expertise. I do encourage you all to keep an eye out for our video, which will be a compilation of the full summit, and we will share that soon. And that, of course, will very much complement my attempts here to summarise the summit. So, briefly, On day one, we framed the provocations for the summit and for the panelists around challenging all of us to reflect on our knowledge systems and how we go about knowing ourselves and our relationship with the world. Just about all panelists, the majority of them were First Nations people from across Australia and the Oceania region. And that was a deliberate approach by us at Future Earth Australia in partnership with the University of Sydney and Western Sydney University, whereby we knew that traditional Western approaches to these major social, technological and policy changes that are needed are typically dominated by formal, very siloed and professional knowledge, guided through formal policy and political processes. And while they're necessary, those pathways are often insufficient for the transformative change that's needed. So day one opened with the urgent issue of transformative adaptation from the knowledge perspectives of a diverse and critical audience. We had particular emphasis on the deep knowledge and capabilities and historical knowledge over tens of thousands of years of First Nations people in Australia and across Oceania. Our keynote for day one, Bruce Pascoe, was compelling and had a number of important messages for us. But one of them was his urging for us to not hate our grandchildren in thinking about our relationship with each other, with nature and with the planet. Day two was focused on enabling adaptation. What does it take to actually discuss and embed the urgency of transformative climate adaptation in the here and now for which we're living? Our panelists offered a range of perspectives on this. This included a close examination of the knowledge and perspectives on forward pathways for climate adaptation finance, both public and private, the role of climate risk disclosures, measuring and standards here in Australia and across the world, and the implications, very clear implications of that for our insurance, banking and superannuation industries, among others. And a close examination of who does what and how they do it, and what are the frameworks to enable success. And we heard from philanthropy, senior government, policymakers and the private sector on these issues. Day two's keynote, Marcelo Mina is a former Chilean Minister for the Environment, and he spoke with us about the optimistic possibilities for a green social capitalist approach to our necessary low carbon transitions. He inspired the day of panelists discussing finance risk and disclosures and the regulatory frameworks needed from government, and drew upon a range of case study examples from Latin America to illustrate how this could be achieved. Finally, day three, we had a range of panelists discussing achieving adaptation at scale, recognising the balance between good bottom-up place-based actions with strong community involvement and top-down policy decisions that can help facilitate that action. Discussions examine transitions and transformations needed, and how we think about the longer term planning decisions as against the shorter term outcomes and priorities that can dominate both policy making and business decision making. For day three, we were very fortunate to have with us Victorian Minister Lily D'Ambrosio. She's the Minister for Environment in Victoria here in Australia. She spoke with us at length about the power of government leadership and the fantastic work being done right across Victoria. Our panellists throughout the day gave considered perspectives on the scale of the challenge and for the opportunities available to us in addressing climate impacts and the adaptation needed, and ways that we could respond to this urgency. So an immensely diverse and comprehensive 3 days so far. And now we are so honoured to have with us Gayle Schueller, who is the Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer for 3M. Gayle started in 3M's corporate laboratory as a product development engineer. She has over 28 years of technical and business leadership experience. Her career spans a broad range of businesses, from electronics to healthcare to consumer industries. and she has the technical and business teams from right around the world, including Europe, Asia, Latin America, and North America. So an immensely rich and well-developed experience in this space. Gayle's previous assignments include a role as Vice President of New Platforms for Growth and Commercialization, Director General for 3M in Mexico, Vice President for Global Sustainability, and Vice President of Research and Development and Design for 3M's consumer and office business. Gayle is very passionate about making a positive impact in the world through science and technology, and we are so very honoured to have her with us this morning. I'm going to now hand over to you, Gayle. Thank you very much, and we're looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tayanah. It's a pleasure to join you as well as the team here that's come together of future leaders. I'm really honored and excited to work with you today. So Al, if you'll bring up the slides, I'll start with a little bit of background. I'll give you some background on myself, talk a little bit about some things that 3M is doing, and then open it up for questions. I'm looking forward to a discussion. I always am happy to speak with early career people and leaders like yourselves going forward. So next slide, please, Al. So this is just a photo of me. You can, I guess, see me in video, but I wish we were together in person. I'm actually recently promoted to Senior Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer. So I think we need to update our bio next time we send it out. And that happened in the time between the decision to come and present with you today and then today. My education background, I hold an undergraduate degree in physics from a relatively small school in New York State, and a PhD in material science from the University of Virginia. This career space, I really came in thinking I would be doing research and developing new products. I did not envision a career that would span things like sustainability, because heck, there was never a chief sustainability officer in any company I'd worked with when I started my career. So this kind of gives you an idea of how my career has progressed, starting with the time that I graduated with my PhD in 1992. That was shortly after that I joined 3M, and I started working in our corporate research labs, developed some new products that were relevant for our electronics business, and worked with the folks in that business to make them into reality. Had the opportunity to work with customers at a fairly early point in my career, and found that was something I was really passionate about. One of the things coming out with a PhD, you think about, do you want to go work in an academic environment? Do you want to work in a national labs? Do you want to work in an industry? And for me, I really wanted to create products for the world and have an impact in that way. I had done some I had done some work in those other environments, and I really felt like making a difference through products and practical things. And that has made 3M very appropriate. We'll talk more about 3M in a minute. But I've developed my career through electronics, got to work with technology and business types of roles across with some of our most important customers. And then I moved to a role that I thought would be the aspiration for my entire career, was to be technical director in electronics. And then that happened fairly young for me. So I did that for a while, and then had an opportunity actually to change careers pretty dramatically, staying in the same company, but moving from electronics into healthcare, really driving R&D and using all the knowledge I had developed in the electronic space into the healthcare space. So that was really an interesting period. And then I got surprised being picked off to lead R&D for our consumer business. And specifically, I was asked to figure out what 3M should do around design and around sustainability. Those were really new concepts for a corporation back around 2009. And that was the quest that I was asked to go after. Being Director General for Mexico was an amazing experience. I was the first female to ever lead that, and that's essentially leading our entire operations for the country. Fascinating role. Thrilled to have the opportunity to have done that before I came back and really led some new efforts in new platforms and commercialization, and moved into the Chief Sustainability Officer role, first at the Vice President level, and then more recently as a Senior Vice President. So I'll take a moment to share with you on the next slide just a little bit about how you drive impact as a business. I didn't mention it previously, but I was the daughter of two teachers. My mother taught special education at a middle school level, and my father taught high school chemistry and served as assistant principal, vice principal at a high school, my high school, before they both retired. So they instilled in me, we also had the summers off, and we spent time traveling around the country as camping and around the United States and a little bit of Canada. And they instilled in me a really strong sense of purpose and interest in driving impact. So the question was, how could I drive impact in a bigger way? Next slide, please, Al. So the fact is that 3M has been a wonderful choice for me. It fit with my relatively short attention span, liking to work across different areas from electronics to healthcare to consumer business. I've touched the entire company at this point, but I love that our whole foundation and ambition is around improving lives. This is what we really aspire to do, what our purpose is as an enterprise, and we bring technologies together in all different ways to make that happen. Many are showcased on this slide, but as we go to the next one, I'd like to just share a little bit of how this fits together in terms of the value model that we have. So we have this overall vision as an enterprise we're based on technology and science, and we are about 3M technology advancing every company, 3M products enhancing every home, and 3M innovation improving every life. So that's everything from helping advance the future of autonomous driving or automotive electrification for electric vehicles, to solutions like command strips and Scotch-Brite to enhance homes, to really ways that healthcare solutions, N95 respirators, et cetera, really improve lives. We build our foundation on the strengths related to technology, manufacturing, our global capabilities around the world, and the brand. And our priorities as we emphasize our work are about making sure we have the right portfolio, continuously transforming our business, continuously inventing, and being at the core of that are our people and culture. Finally, our values are about inclusion, diversity, sustainability, and respecting efforts. If we look externally, that is where we really get to our definition around sustainability. I mentioned previously when I started my career, I suppose the word sustainability existed, but it didn't exist in the form of jobs or organizations or titles like Chief Sustainability Officer. It was back in 1987 that the United Nations first came up with this idea that sustainable development is development that meets the needs of today, of the present, without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And so often we look at it kind of with this Venn diagram of environmental stewardship, social responsibility, and economic success coming together for sustainability. And I really like to align around the United Nations SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, where they've identified the 17 different areas spanning from environmental to social to governance of how we need to work together to really ensure that vision of the Brundtland Commission back from 1987. Next slide. So it's with that foundation and that understanding of the global reach and the diversity of 3M's portfolio that we developed our strategic sustainability framework. It's all about leading and innovating for a more sustainable future with the ambition of applying our science to improve every life. And every life may seem ambitious, and it truly is, but it is based on this thinking and understanding that statistically around the world, you're never more than 10 feet or 3 meters away from a 3M product, whether it's the Post-it notes on my desk or the content in my phone that allows it to have a bright, impactful screen and a reasonable battery life. Those are great examples of things that right now I'm far closer than that. But when we looked at it, we wanted to look at where could we make a difference? What was authentic to us? And we brought together what I refer to often as the dream team of leaders from around the enterprise, upcoming leaders, maybe not unlike yourself, who really had the right expertise, whether it was in every individual business that we have or every function around the enterprise, and truly representing a global scale. We identified that scientific superpower as being critical. We identified science for circular, where we design solutions to drive for our science for climate, which is about innovating to decarbonize industry, advancing the global climate solutions, and improving our collective environmental footprint. And science for community. No year has that been more relevant than during the pandemic with 2020 and now into 2022, where we're about creating a more positive world through science and partnering with others to join us through STEM education, through providing solutions to our customers, et cetera. And the next slide, you'll see that these are very well aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So we think about how that science for circular, science for climate, and science for community really map to those fundamental needs that we look at around the world. Since 2015, we have set forward a bold set of goals for maturity in 2025. These range from reducing our own carbon footprint to helping our customers do the same. They also include areas where we help reduce our manufacturing waste, driving towards zero landfill, and helping provide training to communities around the world on how to have better health-related outcomes. We are continuing to advance on these goals, and I'll talk a little bit more on that in the coming slides. Next slide. In 2019, this shows the progress that we've made on those goals. Every year, as part of our annual sustainability report, we share the progress that we've made on all of our sustainability goals from each of our pillars. I'm delighted to let you know that we are close to reporting on our 2020 goals, that they will be coming out in May 11th this year. And while we have the data and things like this that we've been scrambling and we're working them together, that's when we'll be going public. And I would invite each of you to go ahead and take a look at our progress at that time. Next slide. So I mentioned that we continue to raise the bar and continue to advance our goals base. So building on the goals that we set forward in 2015, we're striving to do more. One of the ambitious goals that we announced in February of this year is about our commitment to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 and setting a critical interim milestone of a 50% reduction by 2030 and an 80% reduction by 2040. This is something we cannot do alone. It's in our own operations, but we need to collaborate with others to make it happen. And one of the things I'm excited about announcing a goal like this is it helps bring others forward who want to partner with us to make it happen, and helps us work with new technologies and solutions and partners to really make a difference. Next slide. In addition to the carbon neutrality goal that we published in February, we also became more bold on our existing water goals. We've advanced our commitment on water use reduction. We previously had a goal about reducing our water use by 10%, and we raised that goal to reduce our water use by 25% by 2030, while improving the overall water quality. So what this means, and again, we're setting interim milestones so we can demonstrate that process. We're aiming for a 10% reduction in our water use by the end of next year in 2022, a 20% reduction by 2025, which is where we previously had our 10% goal, and a full 25% reduction by 2030. At the same time, we're doing this, we're advancing our capabilities in our facilities to both reduce our water use and improve the water quality of water as it leaves our facilities. Next slide. One of our cornerstone commitments around sustainability is what we call our sustainability value commitment. We know that our greatest aspect that drives our environmental footprint and helps our customers address theirs is in our products. So starting in 2019, we made a commitment that every new product must have a sustainability value commitment, demonstrating how it drives impact for the greater good. And this formal requirement is for every new product that we develop across the entire portfolio. You may be wondering how that works. So if we go to the next slide, I'll give you a few examples. On the left hand, so this is all about inspiring innovation through sustainability. It can be things that we know that are relatively incremental, from advancing individual processes in our own operation. It can be inspired by our customers, or it can be based on understanding of major market trends and efforts that really have a way of transforming businesses. So if we go from left to right on this slide, what you see is things that first, we go from our sustainable materials and processes. This is about reinventing materials, reinventing products, that they are more sustainable in the material choices, like maybe using recycled content or plant-based materials, or less materials, or reinventing the processes used to make them, either with more efficient operations from an energy or water perspective, reducing waste, etc. That is kind of the first area that people think about when they think about sustainability inspired innovation. And it's the first area our teams were thinking about in 2019 when we set up this goal. So we really have done a lot with reinventing materials and reinventing processes. As you go to the right on this chart and move into sustainable solutions, this is really about partnering with our customers. And this has the opportunity to really amplify the work and create a much more positive impact. Example that we're showing here is a paint preparation systems that help our customers greatly reduce the amount of material and paint used in this case, painting automobiles. By helping our customers reduce their impact, that's actually creating a greater, more positive way of impacting the world. And then finally, on the right-hand side, these are ways that we really enable new business models based on understanding market shifts and megatrends. The example I like to highlight here is in our roofing granules business. That business has been around since the 1940s and really helps create roof constructions that are very common in North American homes and elsewhere around the world. What we learned through understanding the broader trends, we learned more about the needs of urban heat islands for urban heating and cooling issues, as well as smog in the air. And our researchers then decided that they could go back and change the coatings that we put on those roofing granules, typically used just to make them have the right kind of appearance. Now it could actually have a greater purpose to help pull smog out of the air and to help reflect the UV rays in order to help reduce the effects of urban heat islands. So those are just some examples. If we go to the next slide, I'd like to remind you that as you go forward into your career, and I'm waiting for the slide to advance. Okay, one more slide now. As you're looking into your career in your early stages, there are many ways that the world will be changing in the course of your career in your lifetime. It certainly has changed during mine. One of the things I like to think about is the concept they use when you're thinking about future planning. The idea is that the future is actually here already. It's just unevenly distributed. So when we talk about things or get exposed to things like urban heat islands, we've talked about autonomous vehicles, urban greenhouse effects, other ways that we have renewable energy and things all around the world that are happening. They can be happening at a very local scale or at a major scale. As you start to see those little signals, how do you piece them together? How do you see where the world is going? And as emerging leaders, I would love for you to be thinking about this space. I remember when I started my career in electronics, something like this handheld phone device was inconceivable. There's just There were so many obstacles at the time, but one by one, when you have the vision of what it could be, something that takes your newspaper and your phone and your camera, bringing that all together, as well as encyclopedias, that's a crazy concept back in the late 1980s and early 1990s. But today it's very much a reality for all of us. We're speaking here live from different parts of the world. Truly exciting, truly just a new way to expose the world. I'd like you to think about that as you approach your career, because if you're like me, you're going to have many different aspects in your career, and you will likely have a job at some point that doesn't exist today. So with that, I would like to open it up to questions or discussion. And I don't know if it's possible, but if you can go on video when you ask a question, that would be far more engaging if we can do that.
Gayle, thank you so much for that really insightful presentation on the range of not only career opportunities and roles that you've had, but also the work that 3M is doing. I did my research before this, and I still learned new things in your presentation. So, so thank you so much. I think, unfortunately, with the way that Zoom operates, I'm not sure that any of our attendees can turn their video on because we're in webinar mode,
Gotcha.
as opposed to.
But I can see you.
You can see me, and I've got the Q&A box here, and we can facilitate a discussion that way. For those of you in the virtual room, please continue to put questions into the Q&A. We will monitor that. And I'm going to turn now immediately to the questions here. Oh, this is excellent. Someone has posted 3 questions for you. I'll come to those, but I might start with Taryn's question, seeing as it's at the top of the list. Taryn has asked, given 3M products are so ubiquitous, how do you choose where to start with driving sustainability?
That's a great question, and something that we've been thinking about a lot as we've been setting these bold goals. I think it's a combination, actually, of grassroots efforts like our sustainability value commitment, where every team has to be thinking about how they can create an impact. So I think that's a really powerful way of approaching it. We have a very democratic type of corporate culture, so that is one piece of it, but it's not enough. The other piece that needs to happen is to understand from the broader level as an enterprise. And so, for example, our Chief Executive Officer or CEO is very passionate about this space, which makes it really helpful for me. When we're pulling together our data for our sustainability report, we report on things like our greenhouse gas emissions, like our water use, et cetera. And we make sure that we understand where it's coming from. So we do what we call a Pareto analysis. Where is the biggest impact? And we look at those top areas in order to set a goal like we did with carbon and with water. And so we do that. That's a top-down approach. And so we'll know which manufacturing site, which part of our portfolio, maybe which technology we're using across the company that has the biggest footprint. And so we take that top-down approach to go to those facilities and work on the specific things that are most impactful, or to go to those technologies. Maybe there's a technology that goes into tape manufacturing, and we use tape manufacturing for everything from electrical connections to Scotch tape in your home, and many other areas in between. Assembling vehicles that are based on aluminum instead of steel, and therefore have much better gas mileage or better electric vehicle range. Those types of things have to be I think it's best done when it's simultaneously top-down, understanding where you can have the biggest impact, but instilling the cultural piece so that everyone takes part where they can make the biggest impact for their role.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you. And I think that applies to government, community sector, a whole range of different areas where we all need to be leaning in to drive sustainability, thinking and practice, but especially practice. That top-down, bottom-up connection piece is so important. Thank you. Now, I've just had a little message here at the back end that we can turn on everyone's videos, but we didn't want to do that, while you were giving your answer, Gayle, and without warning everybody else. So if you're in your pajamas, or if your cat is sitting across your shoulders or something like that, and you'd prefer not to have that seen on video, now's your chance, because we're about to turn on all videos for everyone and bring you into the virtual space.
And personally, I'd love to see your cat or your dog.
Yeah.
Sorry, just
mine's shut out of the door right now, but maybe later she'll come in.
Sorry, this is Eleanor here on the back end. I might just ask, maybe we could just start with when people want to ask a question, I can individually turn off their video, to ask them to turn their video on.
If you can do it, that's great.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to go to Jacob Ross, who in the chat has said, if you have a cat, please turn on your videos, but also has a more serious question in the chat, which I will read out, and we can go from there. Jacob says, what is the scale of the marginal cost of changing corporations in line with the goals outlined here? Do these lead to friction for businesses that have legal obligations to their shareholders or parent companies?
Wow, that's a big question, Jacob. So thanks for asking it, and thanks for encouraging people to show their cats, because that just makes things more interesting. You know, it's a combination, right? We when we're setting goals, we do it in the context of what we call math with a path. Okay, so we actually, when we're laying out a goal, we make sure that we have the vast majority of that actually planned out with known projects that we can take on, including the cost of them. We look at, say, in the case of carbon footprint, what the carbon footprint impact will be and what the cost of doing that project will be. We also lay them out according to time of when it makes sense. So for example, in a manufacturing process, we're very much a manufacturing-based company, and our footprint comes from our manufacturing base. And when we look at that, what we see is that some equipment naturally comes to end of life at certain points. So when we're setting these long-term goals, part of the reason that it's so important that companies set these long-term goals is that it allows you to plan for farther out. And so we know that the lifetime on a certain piece of equipment may be 10 years or 20 years, and maybe we have one that needs to be re-updated within 2 years. So let's plan those in the right order for the right impact. We also made a point of planning our goals around either known or clearly emerging technologies. So as we're looking at some things like, say, the advanced recycling processes. When we look at replacing certain types of virgin or fossil-based plastics with recycled content, there is some recycled content that works today. We have that in Scotch-Brite sponges. We have that in Thinsulate for down alternative comforters and things like that. But there are some applications, like our healthcare applications for wound dressings, or like our electronics applications for precision optics management, where you can't tolerate the recycling approaches that we normally do today with mechanical recycling. So we need to partner with our suppliers to bring forward solutions that have what we call chemical recycling or advanced recycling that retain those performance factors. And that's going to take some time to put in place. And so we need to do that. That takes a little bit of time. We do have a fiduciary responsibility to our shareholders, and we take that extremely seriously. What we're finding is more and more shareholders are expecting not only companies to deliver on their financial returns, but also to be delivering on these non-financial metrics. And we've seen, in recent years that the companies who prioritize those non-financial metrics, in addition to the financial ones, are actually outperforming the market overall. So we believe that by doing it in an intentional, specific way, and we have many examples where we've made choices that are definitely recognizing the sustainability and the financial pieces, we believe that that's actually the best way to do it for business, but we have to do it in an informed, intentional approach. So I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Gayle. Jacob, would you like to ask a follow-up or comment on that?
Just to comment that it's certainly an interesting problem. It's good to hear that there's a change in the wind with regards to the attitudes of shareholders. It is an interesting question whether there is an environmental factor in terms of the the operation of businesses that is perhaps slowing responses if people are overtly concerned about incurring additional costs. I wonder how material this actually is. It sounds like not a terrible obstacle, but I'm wondering.
Well, it can be. You know, I mean, there's certain things we're doing first. You know, as technologies evolve and emerge, you know, that chemical and advanced recycling, we would love to have it sooner and cost effectively faster, but it'll come later, and it's done through partnership and intentionally making informed decisions along the way. So it's not always easy or simple.
Certainly isn't. It certainly isn't. But I was making a note here as you were talking around the ability, I think, of corporates to do this kind of work, precisely because you're able to plan for the longer term, whereas governments, I think, are a little bit constrained by the demands, tensions, however we might want to frame it, of the election cycle, which means they probably should be planning for the longer term, but they don't always do so because the demands for them are slightly different. I'm not sure if that's a psychological thing in our societal thinking, because of course the CEO and other leadership in a company can change overnight too, but you're still able to plan for the longer term.
Well, yeah, we think it's important. You know, I have colleagues in different roles in our company and elsewhere, you know, who would argue that we have to publish our monthly or quarterly earnings, and that affects our stock price and what we can do, you know. And so we sometimes look at private companies and say, oh, you can plan much better for the long haul. So, you know, there's a little bit of the grass is always greener in those concepts.
That's so true. That's so true. All righty. Thank you so much for your question, Jacob. I'm going to now turn to Stefania, who will also ask her question live. She's got 3. I'll let you ask them, Stefania, if that's okay. But if you could leave your 3rd question to last, because that will, I think, bring us close to time and will be a great segue into the next session.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I kind of put all of the questions. I have been very familiar with corporate sustainability, and I've worked with it. So I was curious about if 3MA has actually monitored and evaluated their carbon and water footprints, either for the products or for the company itself, and how is actually compensating their footprints. Well, that was the first question.
We can start there then. Yeah. So we have been monitoring and reporting on our carbon footprint since 1990. So we were really one of the first companies to come forward. Now the education and the understanding of how the extent of a full carbon footprint has evolved dramatically in the last 30 plus years, right? But we were one of the companies to, I believe, understand it first, but definitely report on it first. So back in 1990, we published our first sustainability report and reported greenhouse gas emissions at that time. As you might imagine, the first way you understand and report on your greenhouse gas emissions is with your own facilities in your own footprint. Over time, we've brought that more broadly. So we call that scope 1. And over time, we brought that more broadly to scope 2 emissions, which includes our purchased energy. And we're delighted that I can share with you that we have a commitment to go to 100% renewable energy, and that we are already, let me see, I'm just going to cheat just for just a second. Yeah, at the end of the last year, well, at the end of 2019, we were just below 1/3 of our global electricity from renewable sources. And as of 2020, I'm going to go ahead and share that we are over 35%. So we're making good progress on that. And that was based on a goal where we were almost 0% in 2015. So in the last 5 years, we've really come a long way, and we have more in the work. I'm really excited about the progress being made there. With our products, it's an even more interesting scenario, because there's the scope 3 emissions that come from, well, there's 15 different categories. I won't give you the tutorial on that live here, but maybe somebody else did already. So we've been looking at all of the 15 different categories of scope 3. The products are a really fascinating one, because we know that how our customers use our products, like with many things, from soaps and showering to washing clothing and so many other areas, that's really a very, very important piece of our footprint. So we partner with our customers to work on addressing both the usage phase and the end of life phase. So that's something we actively work on. Similarly, we do similar work around water, our water usage, et cetera, and engaging with communities in water stressed and water scarce environments where we have operations. I would say we're not quite as far along in the way we approach water as we do carbon. And I know that that's not unusual for other companies as well. So we're really working to evolve both of those in that type of space. And we have, I would say, a very good understanding of what our footprint is, but we're working on those things, just kind of that Pareto approach that I talked about before of what are the biggest things, how do we knock those down, and then how do we ripple across the whole portfolio? I know you have more questions, so I better not keep talking on that one too long.
Yeah, well, the second one was just very interested about the punctual activities that 3M has actually looked into to compensate either the carbon and water footprints, because I know that it can be a little bit trickier when you look into the product and the life cycle assessments, but trying to compensate the company activities itself, it's easier and more approachable. So I was curious about what punctual activities were done there, and if there is any compensation mechanisms that you have.
Yeah, so our goals, both for water and carbon, are actually based on making baseline reductions. And they're, like I said, we do this very seriously, a math with a path. We're reviewing it regularly at our executive levels across the company, with our CEO and with our board of directors. And so those plans are all based on reducing our direct actions, and really making that piece. At some point, we will probably have to work with things like offsets. That is not currently something that we have done. We are, and it's not currently in our plan, but we know the way things work, we will be working towards offsets. One thing that's really interesting, but since you've opened it for me, I will go there. I have a little bit of a soapbox. One of the things that we do is so many of our products compared to alternatives are actually helping our customers avoid emissions. But the way greenhouse gas accounting practices are set up today, there's really no mechanism for tracking or getting credit, if you will, for avoided emissions. So that's something that, if we help make a vehicle improve its gas mileage or electricity or EV charging range by 10% or even a single digit percentage, that can have amazing effects in terms of the reduction of carbon usage. But the way greenhouse gas emissions protocol is counted is that doesn't count. So that's a little bit of my soapbox. I would like to have us have a way to count that a little bit better as towards an offset or something. But for now, we're working on, through our own footprint, through our sourcing of energy, and through our own products, making ways and our supplier choices, et cetera, really reducing our footprint for carbon, for water, and other areas.
Well, I think, and finally, my last question was more on the early career development, and to ask from your experience, what do you think that there are skills that we need to start looking into from our early journey to start developing or working on? Because sometimes I think we oversee soft skills that now are very popular, and I can hear a lot in career workshops that we should be working on them. So I wanted to see from your perspective that you have been working on sustainability, what are those things that we should be looking in and working on?
Yeah, I think there's a combination of things. I think I'll start with make sure you're really good at what you do. So have a specific area where you have expertise and you excel and you're constantly learning and you're getting better and you're driving and you're doing it really well. That will be recognized. And anytime you're doing a job really well, you get opportunities to do more, either in that space or somebody's willing to take a shot to have you go in someplace adjacent. Make sure that you have the technical skills, and I used to say it was like the Excel skills of the way to calculate data, the way to bring it forward. I actually think that's evolving considerably, and you guys could probably tell me more about that. What are the best ways to to demonstrate, real hard data results, to communicate them effectively. Those kinds of things are really important. And then I would say, finally, this is just very much a soft skill, but be open to the possibilities. Do your work really well, learn about what's going on around you, and being open to possibilities is how I got into the sustainability space. It's how I've gotten to do so many things that have just been incredibly rewarding in my career and unexpected. When I was first asked to move into a job related to sustainability, I really didn't know if that was such a good thing, to be honest with you. It seemed very different. It seemed risky because I didn't know anybody who had built a successful career in that space. But the more I got into it, the more impassioned I was about it. And now the more obvious it is that it's actually a great space to be in for your career. So I would say, make sure you've got your skills in your particular area and delivering well on your current role. Make sure that you have skills that will take you, sometimes they're harder to develop, but skills that will take you into any foundational role wherever you go, and then be open to possibilities. That's my advice.
Awesome. Thank you, Gayle.
Thank you. Have a great day. Good luck with the rest of the conference.
Thank you so much, Gayle.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.